to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please, Madam Clerk.
Mayor Beagle,
I'm here.
Deputy Mayor Resnick,
President.
Councilmember Behrman,
Present.
Councilmember Gotchel, Councilmember Grunland Fox,
Here.
Councilmember Sharp,
Present.
Councilmember Smiley,
Here.
quorum present.
Thank you. Changes or additions to the agenda as presented tonight. Assistant City Manager Benson.
Your Honor, I have none.
Thank you. Any from the dais? All right, moving on. We've got one set of minutes to approve, and that's from the regular City Council meeting of March 14th, 2023. Do I have a motion?
Move to approve.
Any discussions? Seeing none, I got a motion and a second to approve the regular City Council meeting minutes of March 14th, 2023. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We have no correspondence tonight, which leads us to the first call to the public. I'll read the rules to the call to the public. The public shall address the council during the call to the public, which shall be included in the agenda immediately after correspondence, and again immediately after new business. The first call to the public immediately after correspondence shall be limited to agenda items only. A person shall not address the council in excess of 5 minutes unless the time is extended by a majority vote of the council present. Persons wishing to address the council shall identify themselves and their place of residence and shall state their reason for addressing the council, and all comments by the public shall be made directly to the council. Do we have anybody for the first call to the public tonight? Seeing none, I'll close the first call to the public. We'll move on. We've got two city managers' reports tonight. The first one is departmental report from February 2023. Any questions? Deputy Mayor Resnick?
I just have one DPW question. With the ground softening up and getting ready for construction season, have we already got the landscape contractor lined up to do the columbarium brickwork and benches?
Yes, we do. We actually got that last fall, and it wasn't in time to get him out there, but we've been in contact with him over the holidays and now again a couple weeks ago, and they do plan to be in there here soon.
Okay, so we're first on their list.
We are
hopefully.
supposed to be first on their list, yes. He said he had all his materials the last time I spoke to him, so we should be ready to go.
Thank you.
Okay. Councilmember Sharp?
Thank you, Mayor. This is actually for Deputy City Manager Benson, the economic report. One comment, I'm happy to see your meeting with the school district on property to superintendent. But my question is, you mentioned in your report about progress on purchasing 119, 121 North Wixom. How are those coming? Any changes since that report was prepared?
So we're we're still in the due diligence period. We did get the first draft of the phase 1 environmental reports for both properties. That all the timelines with that are pretty much in line with what we've expected. So far we haven't seen anything abnormal. We do have a couple follow-up steps to specifically look at a couple notes. Nothing that major, anything of major significance we would bring to you all, but we're still completing the due diligence. We anticipate closing on or before May 1st. That's been the plan kind of all along.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions? Deputy Mayor Resnick?
Finance?
We'll do the first one first. Any on the first city manager report? All right, we'll move on to the quarterly budget and investment report. Deputy Mayor Resnick?
Very good. This is just a question for Marilyn. So with all of the scrutiny lately about bank deposits and with the talked about downgrading, some Moody's downgrading of certain banks, including Comerica, we have a sizable amount of our investments in banks like Comerica. How do our deposits different from the general public's?
As far as like Comerica, those are kept in accounts which are called J funds, which those are primarily designed for the use of local government funds. That's who's allowed to invest in those type avenues. Those are not on the bank balance sheet, so they're not at risk if a bank fails. Those have underlying securities which are typically invested in treasuries and agency funds. We currently, I believe our current rate is like 4.6 on those funds, so we actually do realize a fairly good rate of return. And the last time I checked, it was last week, the maturity on that is like 24.2 days. So what that means is if something were to drastically happen, worst case scenario, that money would become available when those mature at 24 days. So those funds are solid with how we have those invested. And we do have a couple of commercial banking accounts there that process like our lockbox processing and things of that nature for taxes and water. But those funds are, which those type of accounts would be under that 250 threshold. But those funds are swept out or transferred on a very regular basis to move that money into those J fund accounts to protect the monies also.
Very good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to the consent agenda. All items listed on the consent agenda are considered routine by City Council and will be enacted by one motion. There'll be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member so requests, in which event the items will be removed from the consent agenda and added to regular agenda at the end of unfinished or new business. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Support.
Thank you. I have a motion and a support for the consent agenda. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Hey, opposed? Motion carries. It moves us to the tabled item. Do I have a motion to remove from the table?
So moved. Support.
Or-
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. And I have a recommendation to amend the draft village center size area ordinance, section 18.07.70, D1B, minimum dwelling unit size in the village center area transitional zoning district to 780 square feet and add a minimum dwelling unit size of 960 square feet in the VCA low-intensity zoning district under section 18.07.08C1A. Do a motion?
So moved.
Support.
Deputy, Mr. Benson.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you for structuring those motions appropriately. It's a complicated setup. So you will see in your agenda packet, city management working with Ben Carlisle from Carlisle Wharton Associates. We put together some additional information based on the city council discussion about minimum unit size allowable in the various new districts that would be created in the village center area. This was all part of the kind of larger discussion to adopt I'll say a comprehensive rewrite of the VCA ordinance and to rezone the entire district into 3 individual districts. Within this report, you'll see we talk a little bit about the history of 600 square foot minimums. As I mentioned in there, there wasn't a definitive or scientific reasoning behind 600 square feet when they adopted it. The original intent was really to just be as attractive and flexible to developers, as well as to build kind of a attractive level of density that could support a retail kind of downtown district. We also go into a little bit of detail about what other communities that are similar to Wixom that have downtown zoning districts and what their minimum unit sizes are. I'll let Mr. Carlisle kind of dig into that research a little bit more. We also we were able to pull kind of additional information from the city's master plan, as well as the intent statements for each district within the draft ordinance. And then we summarize all of that with a comparison to the current minimum unit sizes in each residential district within the city of Wixom. Everything from R1, where the minimum lot size is 2,000 square feet, all the way to our most dense district, multiple family RM2, where the minimum unit or lot area is 2,400 and the minimum unit size is 500. Based on kind of all of this information, city management, I'll say, we recommend the structure of minimum unit sizes as mentioned in the original motion, or the new motion, which would be to set a minimum unit size of 960 square feet for the low intensity district to mirror what is available in the smallest one-family residential district outside of the VCA. I will note with a smaller minimum lot size, so we have a larger lot coverage. And then maintaining the 600 square foot minimum in the VCA core district, primarily to be as attractive as reasonably possible to developers looking to do mixed use developments downtown like that we seek. And then for the transitional district, we thought that kind of splitting the difference between 600 and 960 was a reasonable idea. The only other thing I'll say is the way that this motion is structured, you obviously all have the opportunity to change what those numbers are and just, slide them into each of those individual areas. If there was an interest to change the minimum unit size in the VCA core district, I can also give you what that ordinance section would be in case there's a desire to do that as well. With all of that in mind, I'll invite Mr. Carlisle up to kind of go over what he found in looking at some of the other communities and looking at our own master plan.
Thank you and good evening. It's nice to be back in front of you tonight. Obviously, at the last city council meeting, we discussed this. We spent a lot of time on the issue of square footage, what's appropriate, if there should be some parameters on that or not, or how we should start to talk about that regulation. When I was at the meeting in February, I anecdotally said, I think it's unusual to have minimums on square footages in certain zoning districts. But I wanted to be certain of that. And so I went back and looked at some comparable communities just to make sure that that was a fair statement, and also what some best practices are from around like communities in the area. And I researched about anywhere from a half dozen to 10. And the only one I found that actually had a minimum square footage requirement in a downtown mixed-use zoning district is the city of Birmingham. And they require 600 square feet for efficiency or 1 bedroom, 800 for 2 bedroom, and 1,000 square feet for 3 or 4 bedroom. Every other comparable community in Southeast Michigan I found did not have any minimums with regard to unit size. In fact, most of them are, all the ones I researched didn't have minimums in terms of lot size and density caps. They regulate it through the general means of setback, height, parking. Those are the limitations they have on how much building or how many units or what the size of the units can be within the zoning district. So it's not wholly out of the realm to put a cap on or a minimum on the lots of unit size, but it is unusual to other communities in Michigan. The one that is comparable would be Birmingham, that has that number on there. The second thing I wanted to do, and I mentioned this last time, is I look a lot at intent and vision in your own policy documents. And you talk in your own policy documents along the lines of strong village center and creation of, and you really focus on 3 points in both your master plan and your zoning ordinance, and that's a goal towards mixed use, housing diversity, and compact and pedestrian friendly communities. That is not, those 3 principles are not unique to what you want in a downtown, right? When we think about what are strong downtowns that we are, you go travel around Michigan, what are some common things to think of? Oftentimes it's mixed use in an area, it's compactness, it's walkability, and it's some housing diversity and a mix of land uses. So what you're trying to achieve there is really realistic and principled to what we think of as a good common downtown. You don't have a village center, or you're just starting to develop that. The goal is to develop your village center with those principles in mind. And our thought is if you reduce the number of your core to less than 600, or I'm sorry, if you increase the minimum lot size to more than 600, you would potentially, there's no hard number or data or science behind it, but potentially constrain development patterns that are necessary to achieve the goals you've already outlined in your master plan and your zoning ordinance itself. So we are recommending that in your core, you keep it at 600 square feet. We agree that there could be some opportunity for increasing that number in your 2 other districts. Again, that idea of transitioning density and intensity as you move out. And so we are in agreement with city management that 780 square footage minimum in your transitional district and a 960 in your low intensity is consistent with some of your other zoning districts, light zoning districts in your already existing in your zoning ordinance. So we do agree with that recommendation and do support that moving forward. Thank you.
Questions? Councilmember Garland Fox.
Thank you. I appreciate the additional information that you provided. So just to be clear, you're saying that if we go above the minimum 600, that it could negatively impact development opportunities in that area?
And I say negatively impact is I'm not sure I use the negative impact, but I think the question is, the more you increase that square footage amount, you're potentially limiting development opportunities. And so if you want to get the goals of mixed use, compact development, and housing diversity in your district, which is our goal stated in your master plan and reflected in your zoning ordinance, the more you put constraints with regards to square footage, the more it could impact the potential for that type of development that you're trying to achieve. Again, you still have to do site plan review. You still have to have your plans reviewed by the planning commission. So all the other development parameters that you want are still in place. We're just talking about the minimum size of a unit within your core area, as well as your transition in your low intensity. What I didn't mention earlier too is many of the concerns I've heard about some issues you've had with freestanding or standalone apartment developments may be negated in your core because, again, these are second story and above, underneath, or above commercial developments. And so there's a little more constraints with that as well.
Okay, so limit, not necessarily negatively impact.
Correct.
If I may, I'd like to expound on that just a little bit. I'll say from the economic side of it, it does make a difference in the attractiveness of a project if, and I'll use a kind of basic example, 600 versus 900, you're cutting the number of possible units that could be in a given amount of square footage by 50% or thereabouts, and that directly impacts the pro forma for developers, whether they want to do a project. I would say it's very rare, and Ben may be able to expound on this, and what you've seen in other communities. It's rare that someone comes in and says, I'd like to do a whole building of 600 square foot units, but oftentimes they will look for a variety of, having 1 bed, 2 bed, 3 bed options to be able to accommodate a variety of clients, and it also helps them fill out the space in the most efficient way that, I'll be honest, makes them the most money in doing the project. So I would say it's primarily related to flexibility that makes it attractive, as opposed to being a negative. It just makes it more attractive.
Do you know what the leasing or selling specifics are, or data is, I should say, regarding the 600 square foot? That just seems so small to me. You wouldn't think that there would be a big market for that, but do you know?
I don't have the data in front of me of what. I mean, there's some more information we could pull. I don't have it in front of me of what that number is going to be. And I think some of your council members can answer this better than I can. But every real estate market is pretty localized and individual. So if I pulled a like community in another place, there's a market for 600 in some communities that there might not be a market for 600 in Wixom or vice versa. And so it's hard for me to answer that real estate, but I certainly can pull additional data if you desire. One last point I would add to Mr. Benson's point about flexibility is, from a development standpoint, developing in the downtown is very complex and very difficult, and much more difficult than developing in other portions of a city. You're dealing with smaller lots, so a lot of times you're talking about lot consolidation. You're dealing with infrastructure constraints. You're dealing with logistics about building in a more compact space. And so, because of those complexities, there should be a little more flexibility in terms of your regulations for developing in the downtown, provided that you have the guardrails in place that I spoke about earlier to ensure that you have the quality that meets the intent of what you're trying to achieve here. But there should be some grounds for some flexibility, because it's much harder to develop in a infill or already built area with those constraints than it would be in a greenfield or somewhere else where you may have some more less flexibility or more flexibility in terms of how development achieves. So it's important to remember that downtown development is very much more difficult than a greenfield or out kind of on the edge of the town as well.
Councilmember Gutschall?
Thank you. I as well appreciate the additional information. Looking back through things, and so one one thing that came to mind when we were having this discussion a few meetings ago, but we've been told as council before that if a developer comes in and proposes something that meets the minimum requirements for their zoning, we kind of have to approve it. Otherwise, we'll end up in court, which has happened with a few developers now since I've been up here. So that's kind of the anchor in my whole thought process here, is that we need to make the minimum something that we would actually be comfortable with. So if in our heart we would hope that it would be 700 or 800 or 1,000, what have you, depending on the zone, that should be the minimum we set now, rather than leaving it as 600, hoping that a developer isn't going to come in and propose 600 and then give us heartache that we left it that way. So I think, and I'll make a motion later, but I did pull up. So going back to intents and purposes, and last time I had shared that I think 2 bedrooms would kind of be our hope and goal and whatnot, but I did look up the apartments we have here in Wixom, 2-bedroom units, square footage wise. Bristol Square and Golden Gate, their 2 beds are 850. At Stone Ridge, it's 800. The Town and Country is 900 minimum, 908 actually. And then they have other 2 beds that go up from there. The Village is the smallest at 705 for a 2-bed. They're also the smallest for a 1-bed. And then 2-bed at Meadowwood Park down on the south side of the city is 950 actually. So looking at 1-bedrooms, it gets Bristol Square is actually 730 and in one model and 600 in another. Stone Ridge 1-bed is 615. Town and Country was also 695 for their, so just below 700. The Village comes in at 568, so by far the smallest again. And then Meadowwood Park 1-bed is 750 square footage. So even their 1-beds for the most part are around that 700 plus mark. And so then when we get into 600, we're talking potentially studio-ish stuff. Not a terribly big market for that around here to begin with, especially with people working from home now. Having the additional space is more helpful. So doing that research on top of what you provided, I think in my motion will reflect that. I think we need to see a little bit of an increase above the staff recommendation. I know when this first came up, was it last spring we discussed this initially? And that 600 was originally 700. I think that'd be a fine minimum, and then going up 150 square feet from there for each outset, so you get to 1,000 minimum for the low density, which is what I proposed initially, and then we talked about it being R3 and going to 1150. But that's just kind of the additional research that I wanted to share, and then depending on feedback, I'll make a motion probably.
Deputy Mayor Resnick?
Thank you, Mayor. I tend to support the staff recommendation and Mr. Workman's recommendation. Again, we're talking about a downtown area here. We're not talking about apartments. We're talking about mixed use, where the second story might be the actual living portion of that building. I know of developments, and I'm sure Councilman Sharp does as well, where full-time residents, single residents, live in 430 square feet, and they're perfectly fine. And if a business is adjoined with it, let's say in a mixed-use development, or someone works in that, 600 feet, I don't want to see us limit our options for the core area, and by increasing that to 800 or whatever, I think we will limit our options. So I'm fully supporting staff's recommendation.
Councilmember Behrman?
Thank you. I'm kind of a hybrid between both of you who just spoke. I do think I could support the staff recommendation for 600 in the core. However, I do think the numbers going to transitional and low intensity do need to be increased slightly. So, I mean, I'd be fine with keeping 600 in the core, but then, you know, going to 800 in the mid area, and then 1,000 again in the low intensity. Because I think those are the areas that we have discussed over and over again where our concern was with that number being too low. And in the beginning, a couple weeks ago, the low intensity area didn't even have a number. So I would support an amendment to increase the low intensity area to 1,000, the transitional area to 800, and then I'd be fine leaving core at 600 because that's truly the downtown area where we could potentially lose out on a development by increasing that number. Does that make sense?
Councilmember Sharp?
Thank you, Mayor. I agree with staff recommendation as well as, and I do agree with Deputy Mayor Resnick's comments. Developers aren't exactly beating down our doors in the last 10 years to put anything in downtown. Why would we limit them further? So I support the 600. I would be willing to listen to something going outside the, you know, the low intensity and the transitional zoning. Did I get that right, the words? But I don't feel the need. I feel like the research has been done. Why do we think we're smarter than our surrounding communities? We don't exactly have a downtown Birmingham to sell here, and they're at 600. So I just think we need to get something going before we try to stop it. That's my position. Thank you. I support the motion.
Councilmember Smiley?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I'm pretty comfortable with the changes, you know, with the staff recommendations, basically. You know, especially the 600 for the core. The other two, you know, outlying elements, you know, 960 and 780. You know, rounding those up. I'd like your take. Does that make any, you know, how much of an impact is that? And
So,
it doesn't seem like a whole lot to go to 780 to 800, but maybe that is a lot in terms of development.
I don't think so in those two districts, and here's why I would say that. First off, there's some market realities as part of this. And so in your transitional and your proposed, your most dense or intense type of housing product is going to be basically a attached townhouse.
Yeah.
Just by economies of scale, they're going to want it probably, that's going to be at least 800 square feet per unit. It doesn't make sense from a market value and a building standpoint to do anything less. So if it's 780 or 800, I really don't think the margins there really make a huge difference. And I'd say the same thing for 960 to 1,000. I think you have the same, because again, in your low intensity area, we're talking about single family detached. You're not going to build single family detached less than 1,000 square feet or 960, as well as you know. So that's only permitted use in that district, and from a residential standpoint as well as a one family attached. Again, you're not going to build something in that district less than. So I think just from a market standpoint, I don't think it really makes much of a difference to go from 780 to 1,000. The only thing I will say, and I think Mr. Sharp was kind of getting on there, I'm a big believer that zoning cannot necessarily help a development market, but it can certainly hinder a development market when you put unrealistic expectations on it. And I think that's why we're both, the city manager and myself are pretty strongly feeling on the 600 at the core is a pretty important number to stick with. Moving out of the core, I think we're some flexibility in terms of going up a little bit in that transition and in the low intensity, just because the market itself is going to correct that number to be a little higher than probably 780 to 1,000. So I think those numbers can play a little bit, but it's a long answer to your question of, I think if you were going to go with 780, it'd be fine. I think if you went to 800, it would also be fine.
Okay, thank you for that.
Yeah.
And then you know, that was, you know, Councilman Behrman's sort of, you know, rounding off. I don't know if that's what he really likes. And I guess I'd like to know if Councilman Gottschall, if those rounding up are even what he's, you know, thinking about proposing. continues to tease with the motion.
I mean, I'm gonna end up making 3 separate motions, so we can just vote on each area essentially. But my numbers are gonna be 700, 850,000. So the biggest difference there are the first two. The second, or the low density is more of the rounding number.
Gotcha.
And I too, I can support the recommendations from the staff. We asked the staff to research this, and they have, they've done their work, and I agree with them, and I can't see going against it. Just we've asked them to do their job, and I'm not a planning person, and you guys are. This is what you recommend, so I can support it. Councilmember Gacho?
Thank you. I'd like to make a motion to amend the original motion for the core area, changing the square footage to a 700 square foot minimum.
Okay, any discussion?
And I just wanted to add one note, just for the record, so I do have what that section would be for the BCA core. Section 18.07.060 C2B, that would be the area that you'd be changing from 600 to 700. Mainly for Kathy, if you know.
Okay. Councilmember Behrman?
I'll just reiterate that I am fine keeping this area at 600, but so I will vote no on this amendment.
Anybody else? All right, I have a motion and a second to approve the core minimum size to 700. Okay, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
No.
Councilmember Gutschall?
Yes.
Councilmember Grenlund Fox?
Yes.
Councilmember Sharp?
Nay.
Councilmember Smiley?
No.
Mayor Beagle?
No.
Deputy Mayor Resnick?
Nay.
Councilmember Behrman?
No.
2 yes, 5 no.
Okay, first motion fails. Councilmember Gutschall?
Thank you. I'd like to make a motion to amend the original motion relating to the transition district minimum square footage, increasing that to 850 square feet minimum.
All right, a motion, do I have a second? Okay, any discussion? Councilmember Behrman?
Again, I believe that this is what's in the best interest to increase this area square footage, and then the next area, not to beat a dead horse, but yes, we did ask for more data on it. The only city that has the data that supports this is Birmingham, and frankly speaking, if this is good enough for Birmingham, it should be good enough for us, so I'm fine with this amendment.
Anybody, any other discussion? All right, I got a motion and a second to approve the, to amend the transitional zoning district from 780 square feet to 850 square feet. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
No.
Councilmember Grenlund Fox?
Yes.
Councilmember Sharp?
No.
Councilmember Smiley?
No.
Mayor Beagle?
No.
Deputy Mayor Resnick?
Nay.
Councilmember Behrman?
Yes.
Councilmember Gutschall?
Yes.
3 yes, 4 no.
All right, second motion fails. Councilmember Gutschall?
I'd like to make a motion to amend the original motion to increase the low density area to a minimum square footage of 1,000 square feet.
Any discussion? All right, seeing none, I got a motion and a second to increase the VCA low-intensity zoning district from 960 square feet to 1,000 square feet. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
No.
Councilmember Sharp?
Nay.
Councilmember Smiley?
No.
Mayor Beagle?
No.
Deputy Mayor Resnick?
Nay.
Councilmember Behrman?
Yes.
Councilmember Gutschall?
Yes.
Councilmember Grenlund Fox?
Yes.
3 yes, 4 no.
All right, and that motion fails. Any further discussion on the motion we have now? Okay, I have a motion and a second to approve the recommendation to amend the draft Village Center Area Ordinance, Section 18.07.70, D1B, minimum dwelling unit size in the Village Center Area Transitional Zoning District to 780 square feet and add a minimum dwelling unit size of 960 square feet in the VCA Low Intensity Zoning District under Section 18.07.80C1A. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Councilmember Smiley?
Yes.
Mayor Beagle?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Resnick?
Aye.
Councilmember Behrman?
Yes.
Councilmember Gatchel?
No.
Councilmember Grenlund Fox?
Yes.
Councilmember Sharp?
Aye.
6 yes, 1 no.
Okay, motion passes. And now we move on to a recommendation to approve the introduction of an ordinance to amend the Code of Ordinances for the City of Wixom, Title 18, Zoning, Chapter 18.07, Village Center Area District, Sections 18.07.010 through 18.07.090, and to rezone all parcels currently zoned Village Center Area to Village Center Area Core, Village Center Area Transitional, or Village Center Area Low Intensity as recommended by the Planning Commission. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Support.
Assistant City Manager Benson?
Thank you, Mayor. So with that one amendment, that would be the only thing that has changed in the draft of the Village Center Area Ordinance for your review. We did include the agenda item from the last time we discussed this on February 28th in your agenda packet. Unless there are any specific questions, I won't go through all of the things that are changing. But at this point, the request would be to introduce this for the first reading, as well as to introduce the rezoning of all of these parcels, which are demonstrated on the zoning map that is also in your package. With that, if there are any questions, Ben or I would be happy to answer those.
Councilmember Behrman?
The only thing that wasn't clear to me was when we tabled it for recommendation from staff, was also, I thought, to let planning look at it again. Did planning ever look at it again?
We did not formally take this back to the Planning Commission. I did send them a notification of City Council tabling this. It was our understanding, based on the previous discussion, that the motion was not to send this back to Planning Commission, but to table it here at City Council.
But I'm saying, did they give any feedback?
No, we did not get any specific notifications either in favor or against, but we did notify them and kind of give them the details of what was being discussed.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Any other questions? Seeing none, I've got a motion and a second to approve the recommendation to approve the introduction of an ordinance to amend the Code of Ordinances for the City of Wixom, Title 18, Zoning, Chapter 18.07, Village Center Area District, Sections 18.07.010 through 18.07.090, and rezone all parcels currently zoned Village Center Area to Village Center Area Core, Village Center Area Transitional, or Village Center Area Low Intensity as recommended by the Planning Commission. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Carlin.
Thank you, appreciate it.
All right, that concludes the tabled items for tonight. We'll move on to new business. The first item of new business is a recommendation to award the bid for the 2023 pavement marking program to PK Contracting of Goodrich, Michigan, in the amount of $50,000. Do I have a motion?
Support.
Very good. Mr. Sickma.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yep, we put our pavement marking out to bid this year, and we do that with a group of other communities, and we found that we only received one bid for this, and it was from PK. And PK has been a contractor we've used in the past. The other contractor that we used last year, JV Contracting retired, so he is primarily the one from the area that we were looking at. You will notice that it was a higher increase than we expected. And when we go out to bid, we bid it so in case we want to do all of our pavement markings. So that would include legends, lines, yellow and white, throughout all the major roads and the intersections. After looking at those and considering the price, we're hoping anyway that there will be some changes over the next year with either competitiveness or the availability of the paints that we're using for marking, and we hope to see that a little lower next year. In any event, what we elected to do was to only do our required areas that really need striping. So we went through and we feel that we can do that for $50,000. And the pricing for the lines themselves are acceptable. They seem reasonable based on the labor and the paint shortages that we've seen. So we're recommending just dropping back just a little bit, not doing as much this year, with the hopes that the legends will remain as they are right now, which are in good working condition, and we'll look at it again next year.
Deputy Mayor Resnick.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Sikkema, the Michigan Airline Trail, where it crosses thoroughfares at Beck Road, Wixom Road, and then again, Old Wixom Road, or Manistee, are those markings the responsibility of the Trail Council, or is it ours?
So the original markings were done as part of the grants that we received for the trails. In the future, I think we will need to contract them separately. The PK typically doesn't do those just because of the narrow road that it's on. So we do have another gentleman that does those. He's been reasonable so far, and has a smaller machine that does those for us. So once we start looking at that, we would be able to do something with them too.
And so we will not be compromising anything that's safety related this year. We
Of course not. No.
Might be a little more choosy on what's right.
Right. And the larger cost was with the legends, the large arrows. There's more plastics in those, and they're more consistent anyway. If there are a few that need touch up, DPW could touch those up as well. So yeah, we will not. Safety will not be an issue.
Thank you.
Councilmember Smiley.
Thank you, Mayor Beagle. Hello, Mr. Sikkema. Yeah, this is more of a comment, but you can chime in with anything after I'm done. I just, for the record, I wanted, you said a little bit of an increase, and I saw a little smirk there. 42.7%. Yeah, that's a big increase. But it's important to understand. I think everyone who watches the news understands things have been going on. Cost changes primarily due to increase in price of paint products. That give the markings a reflectivity, and then also limited supplies, and then labor issues as well. So, there's fundamental reasons why the increase is so much, and things you have no control over. That said, I do like that. I love that you're gonna, try to, pick a few spots where maybe we can get by a little bit, and hopefully things return to normal. Deputy Mayor Resnick already alluded to it. At no, decrease in safety. That's primary. And I trust you to, to keep that in mind.
Yep.
Just curious, do you think it could come down if?
There's the possibility
of
next year somebody coming in competition-wise. There are other folks that line the roads in Michigan, and we hope that we'll see more competitiveness next year. And,
we've all seen prices go up in everything, but 42.7%. That's a little more than I think everybody's used to.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
I'm sure your eyes bulged when
They
you
did,
first
they
saw it
did.
too.
But PK has been around this area for a long time. They have a really good reputation. We don't have any problems with their product that they've done in the past for us, prior to JV doing some work with us. We've used them. So, yeah, and on that note, we don't have reservation with using this company.
Good, good. Thank you, that's all I have.
Councilmember Gatchel.
Thank you. Aside from what Councilmember Smiley pointed out in the report in terms of increases in labor and product and everything, probably what led to the biggest factor was lack of competition in this case. There wasn't that big of a thing. So I hope next year we can go out and invite more people. We'll spend this year figuring out who does it in the area and go out and invite them next time. Because to me it's unacceptable, and we can almost guarantee that since it's been years and years of just those two companies and now they know their competition went out of business, they have free reign. That factored into us getting such a large increase.
Yeah, there was quite a shortage last fall. I know a lot of communities weren't able to get the striping that they needed done just because they were just short. They could not find the material that was needed. So maybe we were too early in our in our RFP. I don't know, but we'll work it out.
All right, seeing none, I got a motion and a second to approve the recommendation to award the bid for the 2023 pavement marking program to PK Contracting of Goodrich, Michigan in the amount of $50,000. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks, Tim. Motion carries. New business item number 2 is a recommendation to approve the proposal for services from Carlisle Workman Associates Incorporated for the 2024-2029 Parks and Rec Master Plan update in an amount not to exceed $19,310.
Be updated every 5 years for consideration. Knowing this, we solicited proposals from Carlisle and Workman for a master plan update, and you can see in the report that it is detailed with the timeline, the work scope, etc. It will involve a lot of updated information, demographics, new facilities, and a lot of public input with surveys, information, etc. But it is a process and it does take time. So that's why we're coming forward to you now so we can start the process. If you have any questions, Ben is here also as far as the process.
Councilmember Gatchel.
Thank you. What DNR grants do we typically go after, and what have we gotten in the past 5 years?
In the past 5 years, we actually concentrated on the Trailway as far as the Michigan Airline Trail. That's where we concentrated to get the Michigan Trust Fund grants. Other than that, back in the actual parks of Gunner Metalla as well as Gilbert Willis were built on Trust Fund grants in 1980 and 1990. And we received a grant for the Habitat Project from the Trust Fund, and but you can't apply for them unless you have your master plan updated.
We never did the boardwalk at the Habitat, did we? We haven't redone it.
No.
So is that something we could be?
That was a grant also.
But to redo it, can we apply for a grant?
Yeah.
Okay, because it seems odd to me, like, hey, every 5 years you have to spend $20,000 as a city to maybe get some money is maybe not the best trade-off unless we're actually getting money. Maybe, to my mind, if we don't really go after these grants very often, then maybe this is a project that staff and the Parks and Rec Commission could take on. I'm not sure how much needs to change or whatnot that the city planner gets involved, but yeah, I guess I'd like to see us be aggressive about going after the grants in the future to justify the cost, would be my only thought. Thank you.
Anybody else? All right, seeing none, I got a motion and a second to approve the recommendation to approve the proposal for services from Carlisle Workman Associates Incorporated for the 2024-2029 Parks and Rec Master Plan update in an amount not to exceed $19,310. Authorize the mayor to sign the proposal on behalf of the city and approve the associated budget amendment. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. New business number 3 is a recommendation to waive the competitive bid process and authorize the purchase of 2 X-Series advanced monitor defibrillators from Zoll Medical Corporation of Chelmsford, Massachusetts, as the sole source provider for an amount not to exceed $61,319.08 from the replacement AEDs and cardiac monitors account number 411-336.973 or -973.351. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Support.
Very good. Jason's here from the fire department now. They're the sole vendors of the X-Series, and so that's why we're asking to waive the bid process on this. And also, when they've agreed to sell these units to us for about $15,000 under the list price when purchasing the Auto Plus, so it's a pretty good deal for us, correct?
Yes, absolutely.
All right, and these are 10 years old that we're replacing.
Yes, original units purchased in 2012.
Yep. And they pretty much met their...
Yeah, pretty much end of life, just like the previous AEDs that we purchased last year.
Very good. Any questions? Councilmember Grenell Fox?
I don't know if it was in the motion sheet or if I just missed it, but are these for the vehicles, or are they for around City Hall or other buildings?
These are for the ambulance, yeah, so it's for the vehicles.
Okay.
Yeah, it's an AED.
AEDs in the buildings, in the
Correct.
various buildings?
Yes.
We do.
Yeah, that was the purchase last year. These are the AEDs plus monitors, so these go on the ambulances.
Oh, okay, great, thank you.
Deputy Mayor Resnick?
Thank you. And just want to be on the record with this, but as I asked, I think last year when we retired a couple of them, there is no secondary market for these. Once they're done, correct?
Pretty much. I believe we're going to trade in one and keep one as a reserve/training. There's really
No spare parts, but it'll still work.
Unfortunately not.
Yeah.
Yeah, I believe the actual internals have to be certified and everything once they reach their life end.
Any other questions? All right, seeing none, I got a motion and a second to approve the recommendation to waive the competitive bid process and authorize the purchase of 2 X-Series advanced monitor defibrillators from Zoll Medical Corporation of Chelmsford, Massachusetts, as the sole provider for an amount not to exceed $61,319.08 from the replacement AEDs and cardiac monitors account number 411-336-973.351. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, new business number 4. Thanks, Jason. New business number 4 is a recommendation to approve opting into the national opioid litigation settlements, adopt the associated resolution, and designate City Manager Stephen Brown as the authorized signer for the city for the associated process. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Support.
Assistant City Manager Benson.
Thank you, Mayor. You all may recall in December of 2021, we originally brought a resolution that City Council ultimately adopted to join the nationwide settlement opportunities for opioid litigation against various manufacturers and distributors who have been involved in the national opioid crisis. This is that recommendation, and this following recommendation is basically disallows the city's opportunity to sue those individual companies on our own, and instead just join this larger pool and have our kind of defined payments through that. Attached to this agenda item was a attorney-client privilege document that overviewed some of those past pieces and companies involved, as well as some of the new companies that are more recently settled and are now a part of the resolution before you tonight. As a whole, the amount of funds that the city will receive are, I wouldn't say nominal, but they're not significant. They range anywhere from total payments of $14,000 over 10 years to $6,000 from one particular company over 7 years. Combined with the other settlements that have already come through, these will ultimately be relevant amounts of money that will allow the city to put those funds towards addressing how the opioid crisis has affected us here. Most of those uses are primarily related to public safety in terms of education or responding to the events related to that. With that in mind, we recommend approval of the resolution put before you all tonight so that we can indicate our opting in for these additional settlements and continue the process moving forward.
Very good. Any questions? Councilmember Gaccio?
Thank you. I just wanted to add, I hope with the next round of settlements that we can work on making Hope Not Handcuffs a little bit more well-known. I think this wall outside of here is completely blank. If we can get a nice big sign or something, I mean, that is ultimately where this money is coming from, is the epidemic we've had in this country, and especially now with fentanyl going through the communities. There have been a ton of fentanyl busts lately that have made the news in Michigan, and it amounts to more than enough to kill every person in Michigan a few times over, and that's just within like the last 2 months. So I think if we can do our best to make that a little bit more publicized with this money and any future funds, then that would be helpful. I mean, we still have people that have addiction issues in the city and underlying mental health issues. So I think we need to get that program out. Former Police Chief Moore did a great job of getting it started, but I think we have a bit to do still. So thank you.
Councilmember Grenlund Fox?
I completely agree with Councilmember Gaccio. And also, I was wondering, I haven't seen any type of proposal or anything come before us about any of the monies that we have gotten in the past as far as what that's earmarked for. Do you have a list for that?
I'm not certain that we've actually received any of the funds yet.
We did receive a payment from the first settlement. Don't quote me, I don't have the number with me, but I believe we received like 14,000 total approximately. Those have to be set up in a separate fund by themselves. So you'll see in the budget this year's submittal, we have an opioid fund now included. And we're working between us and the city manager's office and the chief to determine the usages for that money. And those will be set aside for specific purposes that are laid forth in those agreements.
And these funds will be added to
Yes.
that amount?
Yep, they'll all, anything that we receive through these settlements has to be set aside in that fund for those specific use.
Okay. I would like to see community education, maybe something in the schools, certainly as well as whatever else is deemed by the professionals, but I would definitely like to see those areas covered.
Duly noted.
Anybody else? All right, seeing none, I have a motion and a second to approve the recommendation to approve opting in to the National Opioid Litigation Settlements, adopt the associated resolution, and designate City Manager Stephen Brown as the authorized signer for the associated process. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. That leads us to the last item under new business tonight is a recommendation to adopt the resolution of support for the West End Commons Area project in the Wixom Downtown Development Authority and the congressionally directed spending funding request for the project. Do I have a motion?
So moved. Support.
Assistant City Manager Benson?
Thank you, Mayor. This is an item that is relatively new. With City Council, we have not discussed this much, but we did mention at our goal-setting meeting that this would be coming forward. The long story short is this is a city-owned piece of property along Old Wixom Road and Pontiac Trail that used to be a portion of what was originally Wixom Road. At some point, I believe in the 70s or 80s, the city realigned Old Wixom, what was Old Wixom, now Old Wixom, and left this piece of property that we've maintained ever since. It is otherwise undevelopable because of the presence of an 18-inch sewer main. So we've used it for parking. We've actually expanded parking in this area. And the Downtown Development Authority has recently taken, I would say over the last year or two, taken more of an interest in what to do with that piece of property, given that private development is unlikely there. So they allocated some funds and have been working actually with Carlisle Wharton Associates to have some renderings done and some preliminary budget estimates for what could happen there, what would be suggested. Ultimately, this is a piece of property owned by the city, and so it will be the city's decision of what happens there. But they were prepping the project. In the kind of the meantime, the federal government and the House of Representatives, as well as the Senate, have revived congressionally directed spending, which are opportunities for different organizations, municipalities, states, nonprofits, otherwise, to submit projects and request funding for them. We had I would say 3 weeks ago, Congresswoman Haley Stevens' office sent out a notice that they were accepting submissions. Then city management submitted a variety of projects, including Beck Road. I believe we submitted another project for Gunner Metallo and a few others. Of all of those submissions, we also included the West End Common Area as one of the potential projects. With that, Congresswoman Stevens' office seemed to really like this project and met a lot of the priorities that her particular office was looking to be able to push forward and align with a lot of their kind of priorities. So they indicated that this project has moved to the next step in the kind of review process prior to being part of the political process of being incorporated into the federal government's next budget cycle. So the request is to gather kind of those pieces of community support and determine, and be able to demonstrate that there is support for a project like this, and support for the funding to be allocated to this. One thing I will note is that the congressionally directed spending opportunity would be an 80-20 contribution to the project, i.e. For what is estimated to be a $923,000 project, the federal government, if they approve, would contribute nearly $740,000, whereas the city, and more realistically, the Downtown Development Authority would be responsible for the remainder, $184,000. So it's a seemingly positive opportunity for a difficult site. The DDA actually did approve a similar resolution in support of this project this morning at their meeting, and with that, we've also gotten business owners in the community and other folks in and around the area who have indicated that they would also be supportive of a project like this. So the request for you all tonight is, if you are in support of this project, to approve I would say a non-binding resolution of support. This does not commit us to any funding. This does not commit us really to anything other than there is support to continue moving this forward and hoping, and sort of lobbying to that effect. The only other thing I will add is congressionally directed spending is a political process, and even making it this far is by no means a guarantee of success. If I were to assign a random, not a random, but an off-the-cuff number for how likely it will be to be successful in this process, 50-50. We've seen a lot of projects in Oakland County and in the region be successful through the congressionally directed spending process, but there are plenty that don't get anywhere. So I just want to emphasize, this is not a commitment. There will still be plenty of opportunities to work on the design, work on what this will ultimately be, and City Council will still maintain the authority to make the final decision on what happens there.
Deputy Mayor Resnick.
Thank you. And from what I understood, talking to our lobbyists last week, was House of Representatives has a much lower threshold than the Senate does, and this fits really nicely in the threshold for House of Representatives earmarks. I'm sorry, did I call it earmarks? Congressionally directed spending.
That is absolutely correct. We have focused, I'll say, the more significant, the more expensive projects, primarily related to Beck Road. Those have gone through our senators' offices, as they have a higher kind of threshold, as Mr. Resnick indicated. So, yeah, that's kind of the differentiation there.
Councilmember Grella Fox.
And my understanding from the materials that were submitted is that the DDA is committed to that local match.
Yes, and, oh, I should add, thank you for saying that, they also did approve a motion to allocate funds in their budget for next fiscal year to cover that payment. Actually above the $184,000, we recommended to them to budget $200,000. They also maintain flexibility to adjust that up and down. They have done so. That will be in the budget before you all at
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Seeing none, I got a motion and a second to approve the recommendation to adopt the resolution of support for the West End Commons Area Project and the Wixom Downtown Development Authority and congressionally directed spending funding request for the project. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries, and that concludes the new business portion of our meeting tonight. We'll move on to the second call to the public. Again, the rules of the call to the public are as follows. The public shall address the council during call to the public, which shall be included on the agenda immediately after correspondence and again immediately after new business. The first call to the public immediately after correspondence shall be limited to agenda items only. A person shall not address the council in excess of 5 minutes unless the time is extended by a majority vote of the council present. Persons wishing to address the council shall identify themselves and their place of residence and state their reason for addressing the council. And all comments by the public shall be made directly to the council. Do we have anybody for the second call to the public tonight?
Good evening, I'm Russ Meredith. I am 378 Fletcher, and I'm the current chair of the Wixom DDA board. I want to thank you for your support for the West End Commons area. We think that would create a very welcoming and attractive area for people coming into Wixom, as well as for our residents to be able to enjoy an evening out. I also want to thank you for your thoughtful and informative discussion earlier on the amending of the, I'm not going to read the whole thing, it was on the size of residents in the village area. So thank you very much for both.
Go ahead.
No, I didn't know if you had any questions.
Oh, no. Anybody else for the second call to the public? Seeing none, I'll close the call to the public and move on to Assistant City Manager comments tonight.
Thank you, Mayor. City Manager Brown, before he left, he did have a couple of good notes, and I have a little bit to add after that. First and foremost, from the City Manager's update, shout out to Police Officer Spring, as well as the Wixom Police Department and Chief Phil Langmeyer, who received an outstanding thank you email from a citizen that had an interaction with our police department that was included in the agenda packet. And it is always appreciated when folks in the community take the time to express when they have a positive interaction with the Wixom Police Department. And we're thrilled to see that. So way to go, Phil. Second thing I will mention is April is a busy month for the city in hiring employees, it seems. We have a number of work anniversaries to celebrate. Folks anywhere from 30 years. Miss McGee was hired on April 8th, 25 years ago. Congratulations. City Manager Brown and myself were both apparently hired a few years apart there. And we have a few folks celebrating their 1-year anniversaries with the city. So shout out to all of those that have with a work anniversary. And the last thing I'll mention is we've had ongoing discussions with City Council about responding to the electricity issues in DTE. You may have seen we've created a new online survey tool and have been gathering responses from members of the Wixom community to better compile data, being able to send that to DTE and have an informed conversation. That new survey tool has, we've already got over 100 responses, and we are in the process of setting up a meeting with a surprisingly large contingent of DTE representatives. We seem to have gotten their attention to some degree, and so we will have more updates on that going forward, but we are seeing a good response from the community being able to express the issues that they've had and being able to then move that forward in a positive way. With that, that is all that I have for this evening.
Good. I just want to add Officer Spring as one of the officers that we have started with our cadet program and worked his way through. So it's awesome to see something like that we've had them for a long time, and we're making the right choice with this program that we have going on. Moving on to council comments. Councilmember Sharp?
Thank you, Mayor. Nothing further, I might start coughing.
Councilmember Smiley?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Couple of things. Since you're here, happy work anniversary, Mr. Benson. Ms. McGee, happy work anniversary, 25 years. I'm sure you're wondering where the time has gone. Other than that, just condolences to Officer Andy Tabor's mother passed away this week. Very sad, as well as another one. Safe Bill Daryl Hunt, as he lost his father this week, so another tough week for our family, our Wixom family. Other than that, have a happy Easter and safe Easter and Passover. Thank you.
Councilmember Behrman?
Just to echo the comments regarding our employees and their longevity. Clearly, we're doing something right if Deanna's willing to stick out 25 years with us. So, but I appreciate every single one of our employees that's been here for the longevity for the city.
Councilmember Garland Fox?
Without repeating everything that the previous two speakers have commented on, I too would like to thank all those celebrating their work anniversaries and congratulate them. And great job on the excellent customer service, Chief and Officer Spring.
Councilmember Gatto?
Thank you. I also wanted to share my condolences with Officer Tabor and Daryl Hunt and their families on their recent losses. Looking at the West End Commons plans and whatnot, I haven't ever played bocce ball, so I'm not sure what the upkeep on bocce ball playing surface would be, if it needs regular maintenance. The only thing that came to mind, looking that over, is in Farmington, their downtown park, they have some bag sports, cornhole boards set up that I like to sit out at the Starbucks there from time to time, and people are usually playing that. That might be an easier go of things than bocce ball, but if we do bocce ball there, I think I'd mentioned it to the city manager a while ago, even setting something like that up at Sibley Park before concerts or when concerts aren't going on might be another attraction to the park. So, thank you.
Deputy Mayor Resnick?
Thank you, Mayor. I also want to offer my condolences to Officer Andy Tabor on the loss of his mother and the family of Daryl Hunt losing his father. I attended State Representative Ann Boland's coffee this week, and a lot of the discussion did revolve around DTE, the grid, our energy issues here in the city of Wixom, as well as we had a discussion on the railroad and having some ability to find out what's rolling down our tracks or if something dangerous is going to be coming through our city. She did assure us, and there were about 10 Wixom residents that attended, that they are having some working committee discussions. So it has been raised to a level where, at least at our state government level now, there are some working discussions with not only the railroads but the DTE issue. So I think we've gotten somebody's attention over there. It's good. And that's all. Thank you.
Very good. Yep, and I too would like to send my condolences to the family of Daryl Hunt and the family and of Officer Andy Tabor for their losses, and congratulate all our employees who are celebrating work anniversaries. Who said we didn't think you'd make it 2 years, but geez.
It's been a quick 2 years, I'll tell you.
And with that, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Support.
Thank you. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Good night, everybody.